So the content that I put on this channel is largely stuff that I wish somebody would have told me as a composer in the earliest stages of his development at age 14, 15-ish. So as it is my 21st birthday today, I have been reflecting on some of the larger scale ideas of working in this career that I wish somebody would have told me earlier on, and I wanted to put them in a video. So here are a few larger scale ideas on working in the field of music composition, and a lot of these aren't actually going to be specifically related to composition or even necessarily just restricted to music. A lot of these are just thoughts on collaboration and creativity in general. So the first bit of advice that I want to give to anybody who is kind of starting out in this field or any creative field is to try everything, even if you think it'll fail, and actually especially if you think it'll fail. Part of the beauty of forcing yourself into a project that you don't really know if you're ready for is that you discover much quicker what specifically you're not prepared for and what specifically you need to learn in order to be prepared for it. To use a personal example, many of you probably know I have it on this channel, and I'm working on a virtual orchestra version of this right now. But my first symphony is, in my mind, currently the only symphony I have completed, and that used to not be the case. Throughout high school, and starting actually in 2014, in December of my sophomore year, I started writing pieces that I was calling symphonies, and I wrote like 8 of them. But I didn't know anything about orchestration. I didn't know anything about how to set up an orchestra or what standard orchestra sizes were. I was basically using Wikipedia as a reference and some scores that I did have, but they weren't exactly telling me all of the information that I needed at the time. So anyway, I put one of these symphonies in front of somebody who, knew stuff. And he was like, okay, cool, melodic ideas, harmonic ideas, etc. But the orchestration doesn't really make any sense. You need to specify how many flutes you have, how many oboes you have, how many of each, wind instrument you have, and how to show that in a score, how to show, okay, I just want one flute playing here, or I want both of them playing here in unison. And he went through some common doublings with me, and so it was much more streamlined that I was able to discover, I've been doing all of these things wrong, but I wouldn't have known that nearly as quickly if I hadn't made an attempt. So that's my first bit of advice. And again, this doesn't have to be musical. It can be, really anything in creative work, because part of what is wonderful about these kind of earlier stages is that you can fall flat on your face and there really aren't any consequences. In fact, there are more often than not rewards for doing so. To give some musical examples other than the orchestration example I just gave, you could try doing some wacky stuff with harmony, maybe try some atonal stuff, maybe writing in different meters you haven't tried. Just trying new things is always a great way to just keep your mind sharp. Okay, then my second piece of advice, which again doesn't have to be strictly musical, is that you can always revisit and revise everything you've ever created, but it's also okay to know when to just walk away from something. Again, to use my symphony as an example, I have been kind of internally scheming the content for this piece since probably like late 2016, and it wasn't until April of 2018 that I actually started to put lead to the page and make this thing happen. And then over the course of the next few months, I considered it complete, but then I had all these people telling me, I wish this were longer, I wish this was this way, or whatever. And I basically had enough people talk me into rewriting it, and there were plenty of things that I wasn't happy with myself, and I agreed with a lot of the criticisms. And so throughout early 2019 into late June, I was revising my first symphony. But contrary to that, there are some pieces that, I really think could be better, of course. I mean, the goal is we're always improving, obviously, but, I'm not going to go back and look at my early chamber pieces and say, let's make this as good as we can make it, because it's not really energy that's being used in the most useful way. And you really have to trust yourself for that kind of stuff. You need to trust your own instincts on whether or not revisiting / revising something is costing more energy than it's worth. So just knowing that you can always come back to something, but also no big deal if you don't. Okay, and then the third piece of advice that I want to give, really to anybody, this is not restricted to the folks that are in the earlier stages of development. I think a lot of further along folks could benefit from really considering this as well. But always have respect and gratitude for everybody who wants to collaborate with you. It's a really beautiful thing when somebody genuinely wants to bring your music to life. And that should never be taken for granted. And even if, rehearsals for, whatever piece are not quite going so well, or if anything in the situation is going awry, it's really important to just keep that level of respect and to always remember that you're not entitled to any of this. You're not entitled to people playing your music. And you're especially not entitled to people wanting to play your music. And that, again, that's such a beautiful thing. I have been incredibly blessed with so many folks who have worked with me on my music. And it's just always really important to remember that they don't owe you that. And unless you're paying them, obviously, that's kind of a different case. But in the collegiate setting, or in the, earlier educational setting, or if it's just, some friends, they don't owe you their musicianship. And you need to remember, if you're a composer that is not necessarily bigger into the performing side of things, you need musicians to make music. You're much more limited on your own with what you can do, and that's, especially something that has been made greatly apparent during this pandemic, is that you really need a community surrounding you in order to succeed, at least in the field that I'm more specifically in with this classical concert music type setting. But you gotta have respect and gratitude for that community, because they are performing an invaluable service to you. Okay, so those were kind of the big three things that I wanted to kind of say, I guess. I would invite anybody who is maybe further along in their development. Again, I'm just 21. I'm a senior in college, so that's not exactly professional composer status. I don't know why the lighting just got really dark, but I'd like to invite any of those folks who are further along in their development to share some of their advice to folks who are just starting out down in the comments. And yeah, I hope that this helps people in some way. It's definitely stuff that I wish I would have taken more seriously, or at least known the importance of sooner in my life. So yeah. Leave a like if this was helpful, and consider subscribing. Helps the channel a lot. And yeah, have a great day.